A heavy fist slammed into the chest of 60-year-old Steven Seagal. The man throwing it was Leo the Dragon Jean, the reigning MMA world champion, and he was broadcasting to millions of his fans live. He smirked, confident that the washed-up action star was nothing more than a hollow prop. To him, Seagal was a relic, a walking antique from 80s action films, not a true fighter. But Leo didn't know that the stillness in Seagal's body held decades of lethal Aikido mastery, and the calm in his eyes was about to transform into a living nightmare. Before I show you the devastating move that happened next, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now let's get into it. The story begins high in the mountains of California, at a place known as the Silent Mountain Dojo. The Silent Mountain Aikido Dojo was a world away from the noise and chaos of modern life. Tucked away in the California highlands, surrounded by ancient redwood trees that filtered the sunlight into soft, ethereal beams, it was a sanctuary of tradition. The air smelled of pine needles, damp earth, and the faint, clean scent of sandalwood incense that drifted from the main training hall. The building itself was a masterpiece of Japanese architecture, with polished darkwood floors that gleamed like still water and paper shoji screens that glowed with the afternoon light. Inside, the only sounds were the whisper of cotton uniforms, the soft thud of bodies meeting the mat in practice falls, and the occasional sharp, focused call of an instructor. It was a place of profound peace, a bastion of discipline where the spirit of Budo, the martial way, was practiced with a reverence bordering on religious. Crashing into this tranquility came Leo, the Dragon, Jean, and his entourage. They didn't walk. They swaggered, their presence as subtle as a lightning strike. Leo, at 28, was the undisputed king of the mixed martial arts world. He was a physical marvel, a chiseled specimen of athletic perfection with a record of brutal knockouts that had made him a global superstar. His gear was a collage of loud sponsors' logos plastered across high-tech compression fabrics. Behind him trailed his team, two sparring partners built like bull mastiffs and a wiry cameraman named Marco, whose state-of-the-art camera rig was already live-streaming to Leo's 10 million followers. Their arrival shattered the dojo's calm. Their loud, confident laughter echoed off the wooden walls, and their heavy training shoes scuffed the sacred floor. Leo's story was the modern fighter's dream. He clawed his way up from tough neighborhoods, his raw talent forged into a weapon by the most advanced sports science available. He saw fighting not as an art, but as a problem to be solved with data. His training camps were run by a team of kinesiologists, nutritionists, and data analysts who measured every calorie, every heartbeat, every ounce of force generated by his strikes. His fame had exploded not just for his victories in the cage, but for his hit YouTube series, Dragon's Fire, Debunking the Masters, where he traveled to traditional dojos and systematically dismantled their techniques with scientific explanations and condescending demonstrations. He was on a crusade to prove that ancient martial arts were nothing more than choreographed nonsense. And today, he had found his ultimate target. In the far corner of the dojo, seated in quiet meditation, was Steven Seagal. To Leo, it was perfect. He saw a man of 60, overweight and slow, whose fame was built on movie magic and stunt doubles. He was the living embodiment of everything Leo's brand was built to destroy. "All right, Dragon Squad, check this out," Leo whispered conspiratorially to his phone's camera, a grin spreading across his face. "We found a final boss of fake martial arts. The living legend himself. This is going to be epic." He gestured for Marco to get a close-up. Seagal remained motionless, his eyes closed, his breathing deep and even. He wore a simple black kikuji, the traditional training uniform, and his presence was unassuming, almost blending into the shadows of the dojo. He seemed less like a martial artist and more like a tired old man resting his feet. Just as Leo was about to launch into his opening monologue, a figure emerged from the side of the hall. He was an elderly Japanese man, small and frail-looking, with a kind face etched with deep wrinkles. This was Master Kenji Tanaka, the head of the Silent Mountain Dojo. He moved with a quiet grace, his feet seeming to glide over the floor. "Welcome to our dojo," Master Tanaka said, his voice soft but resonant. He bowed formally. "You're Leo Jean, I presume. We are honored by your visit. This is a place of peace and study. Master Seagal is here as our honored guest, meditating." The warning was subtle, buried in layers of politeness, but it was there. This was sacred ground. Leo, however, heard only the quavering voice of an old man. He gave a dismissive, informal nod. "Hey, Pops." "Yeah, that's me," he said, turning his attention back to the camera. "Don't worry, we're not here to cause trouble, just to educate." The condescension in his voice was thick. He saw Tanaka's courtesy not as a sign of respect, but as weakness, further confirming his belief that this entire place was a fragile relic, ready to be shattered by his modern, brutal reality. With the stage set and his audience captivated, Leo took center stage in the dojo. "Okay, Dragon Squad," he began, his voice booming with the confidence of a champion. Lesson number 1, efficiency. He launched into a dazzling display of modern combat technique. His movements were a blur of control violence. A rapid-fire shadowboxing sequence showcased his hand speed, his fists snapping through the air with audible cracks. He transitioned seamlessly into a series of powerful leg kicks, each one landing on imaginary opponent's thigh with a loud thwack of his shin. He dropped to the floor, demonstrating the explosive hip movement required for a takedown, then mimicked the brutal efficiency of ground and pound. Throughout the display, he provided a running commentary, a stream of sports science jargon that framed his abilities as the pinnacle of human performance. "It's all about physics, people," he explained, breathing easily despite the intense exertion. "Maximizing kinetic energy transfer. We measure every strike, every angle. My trainers track my VO2 max, my lactate threshold, my fast-twitch muscle fiber activation. It's a science. There's no room for mysticism or tradition." His eyes kept flicking over to the corner where Steven Seagal sat, still as a statue. Seagal became the centerpiece of his lecture, the perfect foil for his own dynamism. "Now, look over there," Leo said, pointing a thumb dismissively. "That's what they call a master. Look at the posture. Static, unmoving. In a real fight, stillness equals death. He's a sitting target. His center of gravity is all wrong. He's just waiting to get knocked out." To drive his point home, Leo began to mimic some of Seagal's signature moves from his old films. He performed an exaggerated, slow-motion version of an Aikido wrist lock, laughing as he did it. "See this fancy hand waving? In the cage, you'd get your jaw broken before you even grab the guy's wrist." His entourage roared with laughter, feeding his ego. Marco, the cameraman, zoomed in on Seagal, then back to Leo, creating a split-screen effect for the live stream that highlighted the contrast. The young, powerful lion versus the old, sleeping bull. The dojo's regular students, who had been training quietly on the far side of the mat, had now stopped. Their faces were masks of controlled fury. Their knuckles were white where they gripped their uniforms, but their discipline, ingrained through years of training under Master Tanaka, held them in check. They stood silently, watching the desecration of their sanctuary. The live chat on Leo's stream was a torrent of scrolling text. His fans were ecstatic. "Dragon King," one comment read. "Expose the fakes, Leo," another cheered. But a growing number of viewers were expressing their disgust. "This is so disrespectful. That old man is a legend. Show some class. You're in his house, you punk." The tension in the room was now a physical presence, thick and heavy. Master Tanaka stepped forward again, his kind expression replaced by one of profound disappointment. "Mr. Jean," he said, his voice no longer soft but carrying a steely edge. "You have made your point, however misguided. I must ask you to conclude your demonstration and leave our guests in peace." Leo saw this not as a command, but as a challenge. He was winning. The old man was trying to shut him down. He turned to the camera with a triumphant smirk. "You hear that, squad? The master wants us to leave. He's afraid of the truth." He then turned back to Tanaka, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "One last test, master. A practical application. I want to demonstrate, For educational purposes, why a static stance like your friend's is a structural failure waiting to happen. I will apply a controlled, minimal amount of pressure. A simple touch, just to prove my theory. He started walking towards Seagal. This was the moment he had been building towards, the climax of his show. Master Tanaka's voice rang out, sharp and cold as ice. Young man, you're crossing a line. You are about to make a mistake that will follow you for the rest of your life. Leo just laughed. He was invincible. He was the champion. High on adrenaline and the adoration of millions, he was deaf to the wisdom of ages. He was about to touch a sleeping dragon, convinced it was only a lizard. Leo approached Seagal with the theatrical deliberation of a ringmaster. He paused a few feet away, addressing his live audience directly. Okay, Dragon Squad, watch closely. This is pure physics. I'm going to use a simple jab, a lead hand straight punch. I won't even put my weight into it. The goal is not to hurt him, but to demonstrate how easily his base can be compromised. He held up his fist, a taped and calloused weapon that had rendered champions unconscious. We're talking maybe 10% power. Just a tap. He took a light, bouncing step, the kind a boxer takes to measure distance. The dojo was so quiet that the scuff of his shoe on the mat sounded like a gunshot. From the corner of his eye, he saw Master Tanaka close his eyes, as if in prayer or resignation. The dojo students watched, their bodies rigid with anticipation. For them, time seemed to slow down. Leo exhaled sharply and threw the punch. It was technically perfect, fast, straight, and delivered with the practiced precision that had made him a champion. His fist connected with Seagal's chest, right on the sternum. The sound was not the sharp crack of a sports punch, but a deep, solid thud, like a heavy stone dropping into mud. It was a sound of absorption, not impact. The visual that followed sent a wave of confusion through Leo. He had expected Seagal to stumble back, to grunt, to show some sign of being affected. Instead, nothing happened. Seagal's body barely swayed. It was like punching a mountain. His posture remained unbroken, but something had changed. Seagal's eyes, which had been closed, snapped open, and they were not the hazy, unfocused eyes of an old man. They were clear, piercing, and utterly devoid of emotion. They locked onto Leo's with a predator's intensity, and in that instant, Leo's confident smirk evaporated, replaced by a cold knot of dread in his stomach. He felt a primal fear he hadn't experienced since his first street fight as a terrified kid. Before Leo could process what was happening, before he could even begin to retract his fist, Seagal moved. It wasn't a flinch or a reaction. It was an unfolding. His motion was fluid, economical, and terrifyingly fast. It wasn't the explosive power of an athlete, but the deceptive speed of a serpent. Seagal's left hand shot up, not to block, but to gently cup the back of Leo's punching arm at the elbow. Simultaneously, his right hand clamped down on Leo's wrist like a vice. The grip was not muscular. It was structural, locking Leo's joints in place. Leo's forward momentum, the very energy of his own punch, became his undoing. Seagal didn't pull or push. He simply turned, blending with Leo's energy, guiding it. In a single, seamless motion, he stepped offline, using Leo's extended arm as a lever. Leo's world inverted. He felt a sensation of weightlessness as his feet left the ground. He wasn't thrown. He was redirected, his body spiraling through the air in a helpless arc. The laws of physics, which he so arrogantly claimed to command, were being used against him with devastating mastery. The landing was brutal. He hit the polished wooden floor with a sickening impact that knocked the air from his lungs in a violent gasp. The fall was perfectly engineered to cause maximum shock and disorientation without causing permanent injury. Before he could even try to scramble up, Seagal had flowed down with him, his knee pressing into Leo's ribs, one hand maintaining control of his wrist in a painful joint lock. Leo was utterly immobilized, pinned to the floor like an insect in a display case. Pain flared in his shoulder and wrist, sharp and undeniable. He tried to breathe, but his diaphragm was spasming. The dojo was plunged into a silence, so profound it was deafening. Marco's camera had captured all. the feed now showing a close-up of the champion's face, a mask of pure, unadulterated shock, agony, and humiliation. His entourage was frozen in place, their bravado gone, replaced by the stunned disbelief of children who had just seen a fairy tale monster come to life. Then, cutting through the silence, came Seagal's voice. It was low, gravelly, and calm, holding no trace of anger or exertion. It was the voice of a man who had just finished a simple, everyday task. "Breathe," he said. "When you are ready to show respect, you may stand." For a long moment, nobody moved. The only sound in the vast dojo was Leo Jin's ragged, wheezing gasps as he struggled to draw air back into his lungs. The image being broadcast to the world was stark and undeniable. The MMA champion, the self-proclaimed pinnacle of modern combat, lay utterly broken at the feet of a 60-year-old man he had dismissed as a joke. Master Kenji Tanaka moved forward, his expression one of deep solemnity. He placed a hand on Seagal's shoulder. "That is enough, my friend," he said softly. Seagal released the joint lock instantly, rising to his feet with a grace that defied his age and size. He stepped back, his face once again a calm, impassive mask, and resumed his meditative posture as if nothing had happened. Tanaka then turned to face the still streaming camera, knowing that millions were watching, hungry for an explanation. He bowed formally. "What you have just witnessed was not a fight," he began, his voice clear and steady. "It was a lesson in humility and in the nature of true martial power." He gestured towards Seagal. "Many of you know this man as an actor. You see his age, and you make assumptions. You are mistaken. This is Master Steven Seagal, a 7th Dan black belt in Aikido. He is not a movie fighter. He has been a consultant and instructor for law enforcement agencies and special military units across the globe. The techniques he possesses are not designed for sport or for points." Leo's crew finally rushed forward, helping their fallen champion into a sitting position. Leo clutched his chest, his face pale, his eyes wide with a dawning, horrified understanding. Tanaka continued his impromptu lecture, his words weaving a new reality for the stunned audience. The MMA that Mr. Gene practices is a magnificent sport. It requires incredible strength, speed, and endurance. It is about overwhelming an opponent with force. What Master Seagal practices is Budo, the martial way. It is not about opposing force with force. It is about blending with it, redirecting it, and controlling it. "The stillness you mocked," he said, looking directly at Leo, "was not weakness. It was Zanshin, a state of total awareness, where the mind is calm and ready. The slowness you saw was not age. It was the conservation of energy, waiting for the precise moment to act. You threw a punch, a single line of energy. Master Seagal did not block it. He joined it and guided it to its inevitable conclusion. The philosophical depth of the lesson was as devastating as the physical throw. Leo's entire worldview, built on a foundation of quantifiable metrics and brute force, had been demolished in less than 3 seconds. It wasn't just his body that was broken. It was his pride, his certainty, his very identity. At that moment, 2 imposing figures in dojo security uniforms appeared. They had been alerted to the commotion and approached Leo's crew with stern expressions. "We will have to escort you out," one said. "Assaulting a guest is a serious offense. The police have been notified." But before they could act, Leo staggered to his feet, shrugging off his friends. He winced in pain, his body aching, but his movements were deliberate. He walked unsteadily across the mat until he stood before Steven Seagal. The entire dojo and millions around the world watched in silence. Leo took a deep breath, and then he did something no one expected. He performed a deep, formal, Japanese-style bow, his forehead nearly touching the mat. He stayed there for a long moment. When he finally rose, there were tears welling in his eyes, tears of pain, humiliation, and a profound, life-altering revelation. I was wrong," he said, his voice hoarse and cracking. "I was arrogant and disrespectful. Please accept my apology." "Master." Seagal looked at him, his gaze no longer predatory, but but holding a flicker of something else, perhaps pity or even understanding. He gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. "The path of a warrior is long," Seagal said, his voice a low rumble. "Today was your first true lesson. This was the story that went viral. Not the punch, but the bow. Not the fall, but the moment a champion learned humility. This wasn't just a story about a fighter getting beaten. It profoundly reveals that in today's world, obsessed with speed and spectacle, true power is often silent, understated, and deeply underestimated. A true master has no need to prove their strength to the world, because their wisdom and power are already part of their every breath, revealed only when absolutely necessary. Have you ever underestimated someone based on their age or appearance? What would you have done if you were in Leo's shoes, with millions watching your every move? And do you think true mastery in any field, whether it's martial arts, music, or science, can ever be fully understood by outsiders who only see the surface? We want to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this story about the clash between arrogance and wisdom made you think, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about hidden legends and timeless truths. Share this with a friend who believes that the old ways still hold profound power. We read every single comment, and we value your perspective. More stories about unexpected masters are waiting for you on the screen. Watch our video about the quiet janitor who was a chess grandmaster next. And we'll see you tomorrow with another story that will challenge your perspective.